Hello and welcome to a new episode of the award-winning MVP, the Master's Voice podcast from Mediabrief.com. I'm your host and friend Pavan Chawla, founder-editor of Mediabrief.com, and I am delighted to welcome to the Master's Voice podcast today Karan Abhishek Singh, Chief Executive Officer, HindiNews at NETWORK18, one of India's significant players in the news genre. Karan Abhishek Singh, I'm going to call you Karan. Welcome to MVP, the Master's Voice podcast on Mediabrief.com, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Pavan. Thank you for having me here. It's an honor to be here. I am aware of some of the luminaries who've sat across the table on this podcast with you. So, happy and looking forward to have a discussion with you.
Thank you very much, Karan. You're very gracious. And thanks also to Mohit and Mitali of your comms team for having facilitated this conversation. It's good to do this in person, Karan. I sometimes record virtually also. But before we get on to the business end of our conversation, allow me to quickly, briefly introduce you to our listeners. So, by your leave, here goes. My distinguished guest in this episode of MVP, the Master's Voice podcast series, is Karan Abhishek Singh, CEO, HindiNews at NETWORK18, the Hindi news channel of which, that's News 18 India, over the past 4 months or so, has grown consistently from number 4 to race to the top spot amongst its competitive peers in the Hindi TV news channels marketplace. In fact, every regional channel in Hindi across the HSMs from Jammu to Chhattisgarh is number 1. Karan joined NETWORK18, one of India's leading television broadcast networks, in January 2019 and is responsible for the overall P&L of the Hindi languages channel cluster in the organization. Karan brings to his current role relevant and very useful learnings and strategic insights from a strong professional career that he built largely across the FMCG and media industries. Before joining NETWORK18, Karan spent 5 years at Star India Pvt Ltd. In his last role, he was Executive Vice President, Ad Sales, managing the agency partnerships. Karan had joined Star as branch head for North and then led the setting up of the enterprise accounts business before managing other sales leadership roles across the entertainment business. Prior to Star, Karan has had robust stints across consumer product organizations like PepsiCo, Nokia, Godrej and Hindustan Unilever Limited in various roles across the sales, business development and marketing functions and spectrum. Truly, a young veteran with wide, rich, deep and diverse work experience across important function verticals with torchlight brands in their sectors. That's Karan Abhishek Singh, Chief Executive Officer, HindiNews at NETWORK18, my distinguished guest on this episode of the award-winning MVP, the Master's Voice podcast from Mediabrief.com. Karan, welcome once again to the episode. And now let's move on to the part of the conversation that I've been looking forward to.
Thank you so much, Pavan. That did sound like a long brief about me. It wasn't that brief, but then that made me realize I've grown old. There's more than 2 decades of work experience behind that, and that's something you summed up in the last couple of minutes. Thank you so much. That was a very generous introduction for me.
You're again self-effacing and very gracious. Karan, I do want all my listeners to know there might be some who might not be very aware of what you've done and what you bring to the table. And as you know, my podcast series is a knowledge deep dive, and I bring thought leaders and market evangelists to it. So you're very welcome here, and you add to the stature of the series. So Karan, Star India, Pepsi, Godrej, HUL functions across marketing, sales, business development, and from enterprise to consumer arms, all of it has made you a strongly experienced and empowered business leader. How has all that experience helped you? And what is it like working for NETWORK18 and leading the Hindi news business there? And what's unique about NETWORK18's DNA and its work culture?
Yeah, it's as I said, it's been over 2 decades of the corporate working career. Interestingly, you touched upon, some of the brands that I've had the opportunity to work on, some of the organizations that I've been associated with. I think the key aspect that I would look back upon is that from a reasonably young age, I got senior leadership opportunities and led large teams, and that played a key role in shaping me as an individual, as the leader that I am today. And all my teams, looking back over the last 21 years, have taught me a lot about not just man management but overall business management, because business is about people as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, so that's one. And moving forward to the other part of your question, Pavan, which is NETWORK18. It's been an exciting journey, about 3.5 years now. I think the standout feature has been the kind of independence and the kind of entrepreneurial ability that this organization bestows on you. I have certainly enjoyed that part of the role that has enabled me to evolve into an individual who is not backing down from taking tough calls. And I think the backing of my leadership has played a key role in me feeling the confidence that I'm talking about. And I think from a DNA perspective, this is an organization which in the space that we are in is still relatively young. There are a lot of other legacy brands which predate us, and in that sense I think we're still a relatively young organization, and this entrepreneurial drive is something that is encouraged in this organization across levels. As part of the leadership team, I think we consistently push even younger junior people to take their own decisions, not be scared of pulling back, go ahead, move forthright, and take the right calls that you think are good for the business. And I think that's a standout aspect for the organization from where I look at it.
Really well said. Very, very insightful. You spoke about business management and man management. And truly, as you said, the human in the organization, your talent, is the most critical part of business success. Karan, I think everything you bring to the table and what you told me about how your network really empowers individuals must have been a very big fillip and a very big booster for you. But then you did enter a new place just before the pandemic set in. What were the challenges then, and how did you sort of go about coping with them? I'm sure what you said about your network enabling and empowering you must have been a huge support, and it's a great talented workplace. And I will come to the talent in a separate question. But just tell me in brief, how was it like suddenly finding yourself surrounded by a pandemic?
So I joined here 2019, early part of the year, and it was an absolute sea change from the world that I came from, which is entertainment. I think it was exciting because in my first role in this organization, I was looking at the languages cluster business, so which is the channels across the south, east, and west of the country. And in that sense, it was all new to me. So I think I would put it down to some serious childlike curiosity. For a period of time, I was like a kid in a candy shop, because everything around me was new. I was new to the news genre. I had not seen the editorial aspect of the business, the way it contributes to news and its content. And therefore, it was a great learning opportunity. If I were to look back, well within a year, the pandemic struck. If I were to take a step back and look back at what we did as an organization, what my leadership team did, I'm very, very proud of the way the pandemic was managed. And not for a second am I, moving away from the devastating impact the pandemic caused, both for people within this organization and in the country and the world. But I think the response as an organization, flowing in right from the top, from our parent organization to our organization, the leadership team, the way we managed the human crisis that hit us, the responses that we were able to generate, the kind of support that was created, was an eye-opener. I think the pandemic brought out the best and the worst in human beings, and I can reasonably satisfactorily look back and say with some pride that our organization, I think we left no stone unturned. I think a lot of the work that we did was very clearly with one missive, which was people first.
Lovely.
So whether it meant an impact on your programming, whether you took hits on the costs, whether it meant hiring additional offices or closing down certain places to protect our people. I think that aspect, the safety of our people aspect, that was primary and critical. And I think it was relentless. It was never ever challenged.
Excellent. Really, that's an organization with a heart which puts, in the crucial times, the heart before the head when you look at people versus business. So, excellent priorities. Now tell me, Karan, quickly about News 18 India. How has it grown and raced to the top spot amongst the Hindi TV news channels in India? Numbers and the elements that powered its growth. What makes it truly unique?
Honestly, I'd been waiting for this question, Pavan, because we are in that place, and you love answering that. See, interestingly, Pavan, as you know, with your depth of experience in the news genre, the big challenge for broadcasters is product differentiation, right? Because unlike entertainment, there is no unique content in that sense. The access to information and news goes across all broadcasters at the same time. It's what you do with that information and how you gather that information which starts differentiating the product you're putting up on the screen.
Excellent. Tell me more.
So I can very clearly look at the major aspects which help us differentiate ourselves. First and foremost, one very clear aspect that I'll speak about is the strength of our reportage and strength of our coverage. We are the only news organization in this country which has the kind of fleet on street in terms of our reporters being present across the country. So every single district of the country, and we are a vast country, right? Will have at least one reporter present there. In a lot of districts, there are obviously more. So our reporter strength is way higher than the number of districts that are there in the country. And that kind of explains our ability to reach news as and when it happens pretty much the fastest.
Excellent.
The second aspect is also about the balance of the news that you are dishing out on the screens. I am a firm believer, and that's the editorial ethos of the organization, that news and stories can be sensational, but it doesn't mean you need to sensationalize normal news, right? And I think there is a marked difference between these two, right? Covering stories that are sensational and dishing out sensational news in the form of sensationalism, right? So I think
go over the top.
We don't go over the top, and I think we are reasonably balanced, and that's a feedback that our viewers have given at various junctures across different.
No, I see that on air also. I do see that there is this whole thing of being slightly circumspect. And of course, when something is really strong, very, very powerful, and really impacts everybody, then, everybody, like, you watch a cricket match and you become a cricket captain and say, why the hell didn't Dhoni send this guy to open? So we all have our views, but I think your editorial network doesn't editorialize when it's reporting and does share its views when there is a summation or something. So I think it's a good balance of both.
Also, one of the other things that we have, consciously done is to make sure that we are serving as much variety of content as we can to our viewers. So, you were there at one of our events last night, and likewise, we've been doing a variety of events or campaigns which bring enough diversification to the content that we are serving out on the screens. I think over the pandemic, we've realized that the one key aspect that our viewers always appreciate is when you talk about what is good for them, what is good for the country, and what is good for the society. And I think that's something we are conscious about. And we've looked at some of these opportunities to actually serve reasonably positive content. So while the country celebrates 75 years of independence and the Amrit Kal of the country.
Oh, beautiful.
We did a celebration of our own when we did this big event on News 18 India, which was called Amrit Ratn. We did this earlier in August. And I think what we did was, it was pretty unique in the way we went out and recognized and felicitated eminent Indians who have contributed across different fields. And it went across sectors, markets, geographies, contribution across diverse areas. And, that was a unique event which was graced by the who's who of society, from polity to policy and otherwise.
Are you tired of working a job you hate? I'm Mark Savant, host of the After Hours Entrepreneur Podcast, and I know that feeling. I used to wake up every morning dreading the day, and after years of effort, I was able to leave my job and do something that I love. You can too. The After Hours Entrepreneur Podcast is your guide to building profitable six-figure years. I'm sharing the lessons that I wish I knew and bringing on experts like Pat Flynn, Jasmine Star, and more. Click the link. You don't need to dread Mondays anymore. Take action and build a life you love.
Right, so it's the fact that you've got good, qualified, experienced reporters, feet on the ground across each and every district, at least one pair of feet, and multiple in so many other districts across the country. So yeah, you have your reporters who are trained, who have imbibed the DNA and the work culture and the work ethics of Network 18, which is really good. That's one. And then, of course, like you said, there is news and then there is what you can do with it to differentiate yourself. And that has eminently been seen, and it has impacted and reflected itself in the ratings that you've received. Now, Karan, give me your assessment of how the TV news space, especially the Hindi TV news space in India, is shaping up.
So, this is a space that will always see action, right? And our product is 24/7 live, whether certain channels cover a certain occurring or not, but there's news happening right around us at any given point of time across the country. So the hunger for news, hunger for information, that is not going to go down. What is happening, obviously, is the way that news content is consumed. That has been changing over the years with technology. There's enough and more discussion that everyone keeps doing around how the digital part of content consumption is increasing rapidly. But we could do a separate podcast probably separately on that aspect. But that being the reality, I think we look at ourselves, and I'm kind of combining the response to both parts of the question, TV news as well as Hindi news. See, we look at ourselves as news content creators. Where and how the consumer will consume that content is not in my control, but it is my endeavor. And when I say it's the organization's endeavor to make sure that I will make news available across screens, across formats, in the format and the screen of choice that the consumer so decides, and my product will be modulated accordingly.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's the endeavor of every network, every channel. So that coupled with the kind and quality of content, because remember, it's a very delicate balance that has to be maintained, because you are creating content but not creating the developments or the news that is happening. So you're reporting content in a way that engages people, stimulates their thinking, informs them, and as you said, tries to empower also and give the benefit of the need of the hour in terms of how to change thinking and how to evaluate and look at something. So yeah, you're actually informing people and helping them.
And Pavan, at the cost of repeating myself, news that is good for you, news that is good for the society, news that is good for the country.
Excellent.
I think that is a mantra we follow on an ongoing basis.
Excellent. When I think of you coming from the entertainment space and from the biggest daddy of them all, the Star Network, and selling time and inventory and sales and everything else to a much smaller subsector, that hunger and that power of your experience would really have helped you. And when we talk about what has been empowering you, you mentioned your feet on the ground, reporters all over. And in fact, I think talent is a crucial part of your offerings, Karan. I was at the CNN News 18 Indian of the Year Awards last night. It was a fabulous event, great stars, warm recognition. And every Network 18 employee I met, without exception across levels, seemed to represent a strong HR function in your network. Carriage, demeanor, knowledge, confidence, humility, appearance. How do you select and empower talent and keep your teams engaged and empowered? Because when you get the best people, you want to sort of make sure that they don't go away also. So tell me about that.
So if I were to do a lighter take on this question, how do we keep our teams motivated? I think we ensured that all our channels on a ratings perspective have gone to the top, and that means there's no space for any excuses for anyone. So, everybody needs to be on their toes, whether it is the editorial team or it's the sales team or the marketing team. You need to make sure. So as far as we are concerned, we're looking at bettering ourselves, right? We are perched at the top of the ratings across all the Hindi markets, and that makes the job that much more difficult, because it's one difficult trek to climb to the top, and it's then equally difficult, and it places additional responsibility on all of us to ensure that we stay there and we continue to earn the preference and love of our viewers.
Right.
So that piece has been taken care of. But thanks for appreciating the quality of talent that you
the people that I saw. Yes, absolutely.
That you engaged with, and we are very, very proud of them. And that's one of the reasons why we are able to dish out content of the kind that you saw last night.
How do you select then and empower your talent?
So I think there's been a constant effort across the leadership levels to make sure that our average talent quality is continuously moving up, right? And there are various ways of doing that. But one of the things that we have done is we have infused genuine good quality talent across levels and used those infusions to up the average level. One way of improving talent could be to keep on hiving off what a lot of organizations do, keep on hiving off bottom 10%, 20%, whatever. I don't think we are looking at that as the defining approach. Obviously, there'll be some churn which happens in every industry, that happens automatically. That happens. But I think what we are trying to do consciously is to make sure that at every level we infuse what is the best available quality in different functions. And in doing that, we also then establish benchmarks for the rest of the teams to see, emulate, learn from. And that, I think, is working well for us. So interesting that you mentioned and made a cross-reference to my previous industry. But just a few days back, one of my sales heads was telling me that, the team that I today have at my disposal, it is ready to take on the quality and might of any Hindi GEC team in the market.
Excellent.
And that's a very big statement, because typically, you would not hear that. The average outlook has always been that the quality of people in the entertainment part of the business has always been better. So, career-wise, people gravitate from the news genre to entertainment. I can proudly tell you that
you have inverted the pyramid.
Absolutely. That trend has changed completely. The number of people that we today employ, and since I was making a reference to the sales part of the organization, which is a little more objective because editorial within news and entertainment cannot be compared.
Sure.
But I think, in the sales and marketing functions today, the number of people we have who've joined us just in the last couple of years with experience in other parts of other genres of the broadcast business, that's humongous. We have people from absolutely top-notch employers in this space who have chosen to work at Network18, and I think that has really, really helped up the talent level that you're talking about.
And I'm sure that's not just a function of the kind of increase in salaries. It's also about the space and the opportunity and the proven deliveries that have happened. And I think that also, like you said, becoming number one and being so in a sustained way for 4 months is a big achievement in itself. The network also has made significant investments in technology. What were those areas and what benefits did they bring you?
See, I think what we've done, and I'm speaking about the Hindi channels right now, what we've done is we've constantly looked at upping the quality of experience that our viewers get, and invested in technology in doing that. So the look and feel of our screens, the resolutions that they were at, say 2 years back to where they are now, the kind of cameras that we use, the quality of resolution that they produce for us, a lot of that is constant work in progress, and we keep looking at opportunities to upgrade the way we gather news with our reporters in the market, how we arm them with mobile kits, how we enable them to capture news in the most productive format, transfer it to us the fastest. So those are things that we continuously work on, and that's something that we've been investing in continuously. you would remember how a typical, reporter camera crew looked, say about 15 years back or 20 years back.
I remember how it looked when I myself was a reporter for Vinod Dua's Parak from Bombay. I covered the bomb blast and everything else. It was crazy. We had pneumatic cameras and then it would take hours and hours. You had to put the tapes and courier them, and then Mr. Dua would work his magic on what we send. So it's a constant work in progress.
The studios, the lighting, everything, a lot of them have been upgraded,
Yes, absolutely. How many brands from different categories, Karan, have been associated with News 18 India and your Hindi News cluster so far?
See, Pavan, at NETWORK18, we are the partners to the largest number of advertisers in this country, right? So those numbers, are significantly ahead. Let me just quickly sum it up and say it's about 5x of the kind of numbers that my previous organization had as an advertiser base. So that's where we are. And in terms of significant partnerships, I think that happens on an ongoing basis. Even as recent as last week, we were exclusive partners to a particular auto launch, right from their on ground to how they announced it to the country.
Which brand was that?
It was the Tata vehicle launch. But that's just an example. We do these things on an ongoing basis, So there's a team that is dedicated to developing these content solution ideas, and we see pretty good results coming out of the effort that they put in.
Excellent. Okay, Karan, now for some contentious industry issues. The BARC ratings that resumed for news. What do you think about those?
Again, I have to say I was waiting for this one.
Yeah.
So I think, BARC is a respected industry body, and all the stakeholders in the environment are invested in it. And I think the mechanisms that they have deployed are extremely robust, and they are the most objective form of ratings and evaluation of the content that is there in the country today. Leave aside the country, there are hardly any better examples across the globe of ratings being delivered at the frequency that they do. And that's a rating mechanism which is accepted by all stakeholders in the country. And, the results of your performance are visible every week.
So you agree that it's good. I believe also that it's a good thing that news channel viewership ratings are out, because the industry needs a credible currency.
The industry needs a credible currency, and we as content creators need validation of what we are doing, the effort that we are putting in place.
Absolutely. And what about channels and networks, the stray ones that have pulled out of the BARC ratings? I think it's a regressive step that might just jeopardize the only media buying currency that was set up by all stakeholders, from broadcasters to media agencies to buying agencies, with equal voting rights despite disparate investments by them in the entity called BARC. So what's your view on that, channels pulling out?
I wish they hadn't done that. I wish they showed more commitment to a body that they were part of forming. I think the pullout has various connotations. It's like, I gave an exam, my report card didn't look good, so I'll drop out of school. So what do you say to that? So there's little justification from where I see it, to each their own. But I think from an industry point of view, it's always healthy that, everybody moves in sync and helps to build this currency as even more robust. So, yeah.
What's your view on the distribution space, for carriage, marketing strategies, including landing pages? What is your overview, assessment, guidance? What does your business, that is Hindi News at NETWORK18, do in this space?
Distribution obviously is a very important metric of how a broadcast business is run. And what goes into ratings is the time that the viewer is spending on the content and the reach that the content has across the country. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I think every single organization is required to invest significantly behind both these metrics. So time spent as well as distribution reach. There are various ways of addressing the distribution issue, and some of them have been established over the years. See, I think as long as organizations are clear on what their distribution strategy is, and it is backed by sound P&L logic, I think everything that is part of the effort in taking my channel to the nooks and corners of the country is the strategy that I would deploy.
I know that you did take gutsy decisions as far as promoting awareness about, on the distribution platforms with landing pages, for instance. And there was some industry talk saying, can the P&L of a news network or a news channel support this kind of investment? So what is your view on that?
See, I think, that's been the elephant in the room, landing pages. And Pavan, you wrote a beautiful article. If I were to do that, I could probably not do a better job at that on this. It was hugely informative, right? I think it's very important for all the listeners to understand that landing pages are the perfectly legal route. And let me just step a little more, not just legal, it's ethical and moral as well, of getting the consumers, the viewers here, to sample my product. And in doing that, I do it as part of my distribution strategies. Another organization might take a different route. Addressing the specific question that you asked from a P&L point of view, the organization has a profitability objective at the end of the year, like every other organization does, right? So no organization will take an approach which is attritional to their own P&L objectives. So whatever calls we have taken, or anyone else has taken for that matter, right? Whether it is on our distribution strategy or on the content strategy, all of that has to be in the realm of our business operating plans. If my P&L supports it, I will go ahead and execute it. If I don't get the returns out of it, obviously I will not be able to sustain it. So it's as simple as that. And it's true for any marketing foray, right? So whether it is a consumer product or a tech product, So for example, there's Google AdWords sale, right? What is that? You basically giving certain people the opportunity to spend a little bit of money to make sure their content is thrown up first. Whether the consumer chooses to go forward on that or not, or transact on that or not, is a different thing. It's ultimately it will boil down to the quality of content. You can only get them to sample the content. If your content is not good enough, they will not stick by you. And therefore, if you look at the way the time spent has moved for us, that is a clear validation of the content strategy that we have.
Yeah. Sometimes there's talk about the fact that an ad on or a front page jacket on the Times of India is not a transaction, and therefore as a landing page cannot be compared to the landing page on distribution, because that could well get sort of added to the viewership on BARC. So that is something that needs to be sort of looked at and addressed by the industry. But till the ministry do not say that this is not legal and not allowed, everybody is entitled to use landing pages. So, I think we should leave it at that for now.
That's right.
Yeah. Karan, there's a huge untapped market of at least 75 million homes in India that don't even have their first TV yet, and they are in the back of beyond in tier 3 and 4 markets. How does your business of HindiNews plan to target them, or how do you target them? And how do you cater to first-time TV owners?
Pavan, I think there are 2 or 3 parts to this question as I see it. The first one being there is a large number of homes which do not have their first TVs yet. I think I did touch upon this. Ultimately, it's a distribution strategy of how do I want to get there. And I also spoke a little while back about being news content creators.
Correct.
And I will dish out news on the screen that they're able to access.
Correct.
Right? Now, whether they manage to do it on their first TV, whether they do it on their mobile handsets, we are sitting in an interesting time where we have just had the 5G launch.
Yes.
And we do expect a massive information revolution, right? We know what happened when 4G happened, when Jio came in, what happened, so I think in another year's time, this particular segment that we're talking about will not exist the way we are talking about them right now. They will have a much more powerful access to information. Where they access it, you and I may not know today, right?
Correct.
But they will definitely have access to information that they need that is good for them, and we'll be there.
And even if it's in tier 3 and 4 markets,
100%.
they will definitely have access to cheap mobiles, which are not just feature phones, they are smartphones at the cost of feature phones, and with the infrastructure that's going cheaper and cheaper.
Absolutely.
So I don't think we should look down upon tier 3 and 4 first TV homes as being penurious or sort of facility or device starved.
Not at all.
I think It's really opened up.
That's the Bharat that we are talking about, right?
Exactly,
And
exactly.
everybody needs to prepare to greet them as they get access.
And Karan, you already have an excellent marketing team. And if you were to add to the quality of the news content that you dish out and the distribution investments that you will definitely make for the newer markets, if you add your marketing team and its efforts on, increasing customer awareness to lead to customer acquisition, I think that should close the entire loop for you.
Absolutely. Couldn't have summed it, any better, Pavan. So I think, you're right. The task of the marketing teams are cut out. But the fact is, how do you ride upon this information access that is going to get unlocked? And how do you make sure that you're starting to make a difference to the lives of these people that we're talking about? It's not just the hunger to reach them. There has to be a reason behind wanting to reach them and to make their lives better.
At the same time, I think you would probably agree that engaging them with what you offer as a personality, as a brand, as something that has a PLU quotient, people like us, hamare jaise
100%.
log. So I guess that's going to be an ever-evolving strategy, and I can't ask you to sum that up. You're tuned to MVP, the Master's Voice podcast on Mediabrief.com. I'm your host and friend Pavan Chawla, and with me today is Karan Abhishek Singh, CEO of HindiNews at Network18. Karan, why should people view HindiNews from Network18?
See, at News 18 India, we promise best-in-class coverage of news as it happens, when it happens, across the nooks and corners of the country, through reporters who speak the language of the people they present with. We promise variety and quality of programming, balanced views, the best of analytics, the best of reporting coverage from every nook and corner of the country, which I think is unrivaled. And that has been validated by the love and preference of the viewers who have taken us to the top of the rankings. We promise to work doubly hard to make sure that we continue making a difference to your lives.
Wonderful, wonderful. Karan, more strength to you. This is Hindi News from Network 18 and a great promise for all stakeholders, starting with the viewers and going on to the brands and marketers who align with you. Excellent. Karan Abhishek Singh, CEO of HindiNews at Network 18. Your team and you do great work, and you were very forthcoming with insights and more in our conversation, Karan. I enjoyed my chat with you, Karan. What do you think? What did you feel about your conversation with me today on the Master's Voice on Mediabrief.com?
Thank you so much, Pavan. I have to admit, I came in with a little bit of skepticism, saying, am I going to be put on the hot seat? But, I loved the conversation with you. It was, it was great learning for me, speaking about a lot of things at different times. One doesn't sit back and look at certain things that I ended up talking about the organization, about the industry. So thank you so much for helping me discover some of those facets for myself as well. And I hope our discussions would be enjoyed by your listeners.
Thank you, Karan. And I must say that I never try to put anybody on the hot seat. I'll tell you why. Because when you are invited to be a part of MVP, the Master's Voice podcast, you come as a thought leader, you come as somebody who's an evangelist, who has empowered the space and who brings a lot of insights from experience. And I want my listeners, young and old, your peers and even more senior in age, people and the youngsters alike, even students, to benefit from it, which is why it's not a hot seat, it's just a discussion, and I try and bring out your insights and your learnings for everybody.
And Pavan, I'll also take this opportunity to thank you for the fantastic contribution to the industry that Mediabrief.com and the Master's Voice are making. You are the man behind this, and my compliments to you for what you've created. It's exciting, it's phenomenal. It's something a lot of my peers have mentioned. Everybody looks forward to, and I'll urge you once again to write a lot more like you've recently been doing. Right?
You've been very, very kind. Thank you very much indeed, Karan.
Thank you.
Karan Abhishek Singh, Chief Executive Officer, Hindi News at Network 18, was my distinguished guest on this episode of MVP, the Master's Voice podcast on Mediabrief.com. I found this conversation extremely illuminating, very insightful and inspiring, and I hope and I'm sure that you feel the same. Till we meet again in the next episode of MVP, the Master's Voice podcast series on Mediabrief.com, this is your host and friend Pavan Chawla saying, take care, stay safe, bye-bye.
Sitting squarely in the groove.